Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial in ARK Survival Ascended. Today I've built this Japanese inspired pagoda using a lot of the new building pieces that we got with the 5.5 update. So the new ramp corner pieces, the half pillars, you name it, and of course a lot of the new thatch structures are perfect for these types of builds. You actually need no mods at all to build this structure. It's mostly using the new structure pieces as well as a bunch of paint to really make it stand apart. And if you want, of course, you can spice it up with adding some extra details, which are optional, with some cosmetics like the J cosmetics for the lanterns, which are really good match with this kind of build. And I've also used some plants from JVH Landscaping to kind of add some vibrance, but there's definitely ways around it with plant pots and a shovel from the Bob Talltails DLC, as well as I've used some Western deco around as well to add in the hay bales and stuff like that to make it feel more like an aviary. I've designed this to be used as an aviary for your flyers like RGs, snow owls, pterodons, but of course you can easily use this as your main base. There's a whole layer that you could use for all your survival needs, as well as the ground floor that is big enough for the replicator and the industrial forge. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the build. If you enjoy seeing these build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, of course, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like the video because that helps out a ton. And of course, feel free to leave suggestions for future builds that you'd love to see down in the comments below. And if you're planning on jumping into Ragnarok and building this one and you're still looking to get a server, you can also use my link in the description, which really helps support this channel. So to get started, of course, we need the foundations. And in this case, it's going to be a 12 by 12 square that we need to build. So you want to get started, find a nice spot for the 12 by 12, but that's also all you need to have as a footprint. So as long as you find a spot where you can place the 12 by 12 square down, you're good to go. And then of course we can start filling it in with the remaining foundations so that we have the foundation support that we need to get started on this build. So yeah, you wouldn't just go along and make sure you fill in the entire square. And then we can take out our stone walls and we can start raising them up by 2 all the way around this square. So basically what we want to do is we want to kind of raise this foundation to make it look a little bit nicer and have like a nice staircase up to the main entrance. I feel like that fits this building a little better. And the advantage of that is that we have this entire bottom layer basically to use as an extra storage room. So it's a basement that you can use for all your survival needs, and yeah, that can be quite convenient, of course, because the rest of the tower is, well, you could use it as any kind of base, but it's mostly designed as well as to be like an aviary for a lot of your flying creatures. So there we go, we have the entire building surrounded by our walls, and then we want to take out our stone pillars, add them right in the corner. We can also, of course, make sure to connect them back down to the ground there as well. And we want to do that for every corner of the build. So we'll do this one here as well. And then you need to decide which sides you want to be your entrances. So we're going to take out our staircase. We're going to find the middle, and then we're going to add 4 stairs just going down like that. And of course you want to do that until you hit your landscape and you're back down to the ground. So the same thing over here, 4 in the middle, and we want to bring those stairs all the way down into the ground so that we have a nice big staircase to go up to into this pagoda. And once we have those staircases in, we want to also make sure that we add some pillars right next to them, just like that, to kind of add some different sections into this build. So we'll just go around and add these in, which kind of divides this section up in 3 parts. So even though we don't have stairs on the other sides, after every 4 walls, we still want to add in the pillars so that we can kind of keep the same effect going all the way around. So we'll do the same thing here on this side as well, just making sure that we have some extra pillars to support this whole place. So yeah, that's going to be our extra basement layer, as well as just a nice entrance here. And of course, alongside these And of course, alongside these staircases, we want to add in our slope walls as well as the walls to kind of make these structures work and just completely filled in, so there's no empty spots left over. And we want to do that, of course, on both sides of the building. So here we're going to repeat that process all the way down. Sometimes it might not let you for the bottom one. If you have cheats available, you can of course use ghost modes to get that still in there, but otherwise you'll just have to manage. Sometimes adding a little pillar can at least block a little bit, and of course you can maybe add some decorations to kind of hide the gaps. And of course we want to make sure that we fill in the walls wherever we can. So after all that, we want to start with adding in a 2-wide walkway around the entire outside border of the build that we've made so far. So we're going to start filling in the ceiling, but only the first 2 layers to begin with. That's kind of going to be the nice balcony to walk around on, as well as, of course, it's going to serve as a place where you could park your tames, your flyers, whatever. You just have some extra space that is relatively safe, because we already raised it from the ground, and you know it's a little bit harder to be attacked up here. So we'll just go all the way around. There we go. So now we have the big walkway going all the way across. So from your main entrance, so the front of the building, we're going to go inside by adding 2 more, and then going to the right all the way until we meet the corner over here. Then I like to take out the thatch stairs because I feel like the look of the bamboo really works well for this build. And we want to add a staircase right there from these corner pieces that we just added down into the basement, so that we can quickly and easily access the basement. Then we'll add some pillars right here in the middle of this staircase. So on both sides we want to have the normal pillars, then we want to have the thin pillars at the start and the end of the staircase. And of course we'll also want to add those right on those corners, as well as taking out our railings and adding them here on the side of the staircase. But you also want to add them here at the bottom to make them a little bit more detailed and nicer looking. And we'll do the same thing here over for the other side of the building. There we go. So we have a nice staircase going into the basement, and that's pretty much all the work that we'll do on the basement itself. This is really more meant as an extra optional storage place for when you're playing survival. Of course, if you don't need it, you can also just fill in this completely with ceilings and just use this to be raised up and have a nice grand stair entrance. And of course now we can start to continue to fill in this entire floor, because now we know where the stairs are. It doesn't really matter too much. It's just a little bit easier to get the stairs in the right place right away, so we can fill in the remaining pieces here of this stone ceiling to make the foundations of our actual pagoda build. And of course we can take out our thatch railings again. We can add 1 here at the end and 2 here along the side, so that we have this stair completely secured. Then we'll take out a thatch pillar again, and if we start from this corner, we want to go in by 2 and then in by 2 again to right over here. And then we want to place 4 pillars down right there. Then we want to leave a gap of 3, place another pillar that is 4 high, a gap of 2, another one of these pillars, and then another gap of 3 to place the final pillar right here on the front. So that's going to be the start of our pagoda. Here we're going to have another gap of 3. We're going to raise this pillar up by 4 in total, gap of 2, repeat the same thing, and another gap of 3 right over here. And this is how we're going to go all the way around the building, repeating this same pattern and getting our pillars in the right places to start this first layer of our pagoda build. So just like that, we have the pillars in place. We can switch to the beams and we can start connecting these at the bottom. Here at the front where the stairs are, we want to keep the middle 2 open, and then we can just continue adding in these beams all the way around. And the reason I'm using the bamboo pillars is just because the aesthetic, I think, fits very nicely with this kind of style. But of course, if you want something a little bit stronger or with a higher decay, timer. You can also, of course, switch them out to some wood or even stone, and maybe use some of the frontier skins or stuff like that. We also want to add these beams across the top layer here. So we're just going to connect them all the way around the building, and we can actually continue this all the way. We do not have to leave any gaps open at the entrances where we have our staircase, so we can just kind of continue this all the way, and this is going to be a good indicator of where this first layer is going to be. Then of course we can take out our gateway, and we can I like to make sure that it is snapped like this, so it sticks out a little bit more on the outside. And we want to, of course, do the same thing right over there. And then we can also add in our actual gates so that we have access to the first layer on both sides with some nice big doorways so that you can still bring in some of your tames. Alright, then we'll take out some of our wooden walls, and we can actually go around the entire first bottom layer of this building. So we just want to place them all in there, and we're going to change these to the frontier skins. If you do not have them, I would probably flip them around the other way, because that looks a little bit nicer, but of course that's personal preference. The most important thing is that we use a nice wooden layer here at the bottom, and as I said, I would probably change those to the frontier skins. I would actually also change the gateways and the gates themselves to the frontier skins, because I like the way that wood looks a lot, and I think it actually works quite well for this build. So yeah, we'll go all the way around, changing them everywhere so that we have a nice bottom layer like this. Alright, and then we'll start with some adobe walls, placing them around in a shape like this. Now, if you're on a map that doesn't have adobe, you can also flip them around and use just normal wood instead, like this, but make sure that there's a contrast between the bottom and the top layer. So if you're using adobe, and you do not have the frontier skin, you probably want to start with this layer and then go for that layer above it, so there's still a nice level of contrast. But yeah, if you are on the map with adobe, I would definitely go for that, because especially after painting it all, it looks really nice, and it even has some nice patterns and regions to play around with different color zones that you'll see later in the build. But yeah, for now we just want to go around and fill it in the front, just like you see over here. And we actually want to do the exact same thing here on the other side. So we'll go around filling in these walls just like that to leave the room for some nice big windows, but start filling in the walls. And we can actually continue the similar pattern here for the windows. We can just fill in the middle side just like that, and then we can have another window right over here. And then you've probably guessed it, we're gonna do the same thing here over on the other side of the building. So we can just fill in this entire wall like that, and then leave again a nice space for a window right in there. So we're gonna have plenty of windows here on the first layer. Then we'll take out the thatched pillars again, and we'll have some nice pillars at the sides of the window just like that, and we can repeat that process for all of the current windows that we now have available. So we'll just start going around like this and adding in all of our pillars just like that. Then we want to take out our beams. We want to add them at the bottom and at the top, just as some extra details. And we'll do that for all of these windows going all the way around the building. There we go. Just missing that one. Then we'll take out our half beams, and we're going to actually add some extra details here to the windows. These little half beams sticking out from the front and from the sides, just to give a little bit more shape and character to these window shapes that we've created. And once again, we're going to repeat that same process for all the different windows, of course. So we're just going to go around and adding in all of these little extra pieces as the extra details that we want for this building. I quite like the way it ends up looking, and especially with these thatched pillars, because they just fit the style so nicely with all the bamboo coming back into this build. So yeah, we just want to go use them all the way around. There we go. just like that. And yeah, it's just such a good feeling to have all of these extra little pillars now to play around with. So yeah, there we go. We have all of these little additions all the way around the building. Then we want to have our quarter ceilings, and we want to place 2 right between these window pillars, just to create that little ledge in front of each window. There we go. We can go all the way around. And then we can take out some quarter stairs and add them underneath these 2 quarter ceilings for some added details as some nice bamboo supports, which are looking very, very nice. So we'll just go all the way around to do this. And then actually on top of these quarter ceilings, you could easily add some like small crop plots, or even some of the plants, of course, if you pick them up with the Bob Talltail DLC, or if you're using mods, could be even easier. And then we want to actually also change them to the frontier skin here, these quarter ceilings, because I just think that looks a little bit nicer. But of course, personal preference, whether or not you like that. It doesn't matter too much, especially if you're going to place plants on top of them. You're not really seeing that much. Then we'll take out the thatch railings again, and we're actually going to just fill in this entire window like that. I really love the way that this looks, and I feel like that's a really nice window for these types of buildings. So we'll just go all the way around and just start filling all of these windows into, yeah, already kind of complete this first layer of the building. It's not too difficult, but we've got much more to do before we have an actual pagoda, of course. And this first layer is actually very well suited to be part of an actual survival base. You can even have some of the bigger structures like the replicator and the industrial forge easily inside here. So that you can still bring in your tames to unload them and also do a lot of your crafting. And of course, you could have more storage down below. You could even add a bigger cellar door if you want to be able to drop off tames down below too, and yeah, be able to access it a little bit easier, of course. But yeah, there we go. We add some windows just like that. Then we'll take out our little quarter ramps and also add them here above the actual windows to add even more details to them. So we'll just want to go all the way around and adding these little roofs, or ramps actually, above the windows to give them even more shape and detail to them. And if we want to be even more thorough, we can take out our thin half beams and we can add even more detail by adding these pillars along the front, or the beams along the front, and going back into the side to really make these roofs even more supported. But especially if you're low on your allowed structures, maybe because of the limit or something, then this of course is the easiest thing to leave out, because even without it, it looks pretty good. It's just a little bit of an extra. You definitely don't need this, but yeah, just like adding these little details. We've got so many new pieces to use, and it's so good for adding these little details that I went a little bit crazy with utilizing them as much as possible for this first few buildings. So there we go. We'll just go all the way around and adding these supports in everywhere we can. There we go. So we have all these windows looking very, very nice now. Then we want to take out our thin pillars and actually add them on top of the stone pillars that we placed before. So we want to go all the way around and just making sure that we add these thin pillars up in the corners. And yeah, if you're using the J cosmetics, which I use for the extra details, you could even add a standing torch on top of them to get some really cool Japanese lights on top of those pillars. And then we can actually start on the railing. So first of all, we want to start with a layer of upside down thatch railings all the way around the platform, because of course we want to make sure that you're safe whilst walking around, so you don't just instantly fall down. So we'll just go all the way around, adding in these railings along the entirety of the walkway that we've just created. So all the way around back to where we end up with the stairs, and we can even add them alongside the stairs just like that. And of course that means we also want to add them on the other side of the building There we go. We can see if you can let it go all the way into the ground. Kind of depends on your landscaping. And then we want to flip them back to normal on top of them. So we want to have some double railings so they're a little bit higher. And we also want to do that here for the normal railings alongside the building. So now we have the normal orientation, 40 railings on top of them to create a little bit of a taller railing for the first part of the build. Again, of course, we want to also make sure we have them in place here along the side of the staircase. And then we can continue the rest of the walkway just to make sure we're completely safe and we have all these nice little details. Because again, I really like the textures of these new thatch structures, especially for a style like this. I feel like it fits very, very well. Now we're almost done with the first layer, but we of course need these stairs to the second one. So in the opposite corner from where we have the other stair come up, we want to start with another staircase, and we want to bring it all the way up until we reach the top of the wall. There, of course, we can add in some ceilings as well, and we can actually extend these ceilings to 2 on the outside. And for now, we're mostly going to focus on filling in the outside ceilings first. So we'll go all the way around the building, but of course adding in these stairs on time just means that you can move around the build a little bit easier if you're building this in survival. And we want to just make sure that we add a 2 wide walkway all around on the outside of the build. This is going to be a nice balcony to walk around on, or park some flyers, of course, stuff like that. And yeah, there we go. And I would personally change all of the ceilings, etc., to the frontier skin as well, but to save some time, won't be doing that right in the tutorial. We want to then go back to the first layer here, and we want to add some more details by adding in scaffolding as some supports. So right here, connecting back into the pillars, we want to make sure that we add some scaffolding pieces just like that. There we go. And of course, if you do not own the Frontier pack, or the Bob Talltales DLC, I should say, then you could also use just normal slope walls and maybe look for a nice cosmetic on them. But otherwise, normal slope walls can definitely also act as some support beams. They're just a little bit thicker and don't have the nice air gaps in between them, of course, but still can look very, very nice. And of course, we're going to add in these support beams all the way to really ensure that yeah, it looks all very nicely supported, and just of course they serve us some extra details to make this place look even nicer. So there we go. That should finish this first layer, except of course we still need to work on the staircase itself. So first of all, we'll take out our pillar and we'll add a pillar of 4 right over there, and we'll add another pillar right on this corner, bringing it all the way up to the corner of the stairs. And then for these parts here in the middle, we'll add a thin pillar right there. We'll have another thin pillar right over here, and another one right there along that side. Then we of course want to take out our railing and make sure that we add it alongside the stair leading up, but also we actually want to make sure that we add it along the bottom of the stair going down, just to add a little bit more detail to it. And then on the next layer, we can of course start adding in the entire ceiling. Now that we know where the staircase is going to be, all that we really want to do is keep out 2 spots here for the staircase to come up, and the rest of it we can completely fill in just like this to make sure that we can get started easily on the second layer of the pagoda build. So we'll just fill this in entirely, and there we go. Again, I would change this all to the frontier skin, these ceilings, and then we just want to make sure that we add a nice railing all the way around the building. Then we'll take out our little half pillars, or thin half pillars, and every 4 we're going to be adding in one of those pillars. So we'll take basically the same shapes as we did down below on the first layer, and we'll add them in every 4 that we can. And that's just going to serve as some extra little details here, of course, on the balcony. And then we'll actually add in a layer of our railings, just one this time. And we can go once again all the way around, of course, to add them in to make sure that this balcony is safe to work on, safe to land on, and it will just have a really nice addition. Because once again, I really love the textures on these thatch ones. They might not be the most practical depending on the decay timers on the server you play on, but if you're playing frequently, shouldn't be much of a problem. Or if you don't have rough decay timers, then you should also totally be fine. So we'll just go all the way around, but of course you could also just easily switch them out with maybe some wooden railings or stuff like that, so you wouldn't have to worry as much. And we'll just continue them all the way until we meet back up with the start. Then we actually want to take out some of these beams that we have in place. We want to take out the middle two above the gateway. So wherever the side with the gate entrance is, we want to take out the middle two. And that means the opposite side where the other gate is, we also want to take out the middle two. And then we actually want to add in some half beams instead at the ends of this, because we're going to have some entrances, some doors here, so that we can have an actual, you know, doorway entrance to your balcony. And then here on the side where we do not have the staircase, after the first two pillars, we actually want to take out the middle four of them. So we'll take out the middle four, and then once again we'll add a little half pillar or beam on both sides so that this gap is a little bit smaller. There's now a 3 wide gap there in the middle because there's going to be a bigger barn door there to the side. Then we want to take out our pillars and we want to raise them up by 5 high this time. We want to do the same thing here. So after a gap of 3, we will raise up these pillars once again, and then a gap of 2 to raise up these pillars as well. 5 high this time, so they're going to be slightly higher than the pillars for the first layer that we had. Here on the side where we're going to have the big hangar door, we're going to skip the pillars for now. We're going to only add them right here on the corner, again being 5 high. Then another gap of 3 for the next pillar, a gap of 2 for the pillar, and then once again a pillar right here on the corner. Then this side again is going to have a gap of 3 for a pillar that is going to be 5 high, a gap of 2, and then we have the last pillar that we needed there. Then we want to add in the beam, but instead of at the top, we want to add them after 4 pillars. So 1 from the top, and we want to bring this all the way across the entire build. So yeah, we'll just go all the way along the entire build and add in our beams all the way around, just like that. And of course, trying to not misplace them. Sometimes scrolling through these snap points can be a little bit easier, but yeah, there we go. We want to basically bring the main structure into place before we start placing all sorts of walls. Then here on this side, we want to make sure that we bring up the pillars by 3, just like that. Same over here. And then we can connect them again with 3 beams just like that. And then actually here in the middle, we want to make sure that we have a gap of 3 and then the pillars, so they line up with the pillars right on the other side of the building. Then we can bring out our little half beams and we can actually add them on all the corners or all the connecting points of the normal beams that we have. So we just want to add them sticking out just like this, as again a little bit of extra detail for the build. So we'll just want to bring that all the way around, add all of them in like that. There we go. So yeah, we basically want to do this for all of the sides, of course. So we'll just keep going around, getting those snap points and adding these little additions to the outside to create a little bit more depth and detail. Then we'll be taking out our adobe walls, flipping them around so that this pattern here is on the outside, and we'll only be doing the top layer with them. And because this outside layer is here, you can actually paint certain region to only paint those little beams that we see in one color, and then paint the rest in the silver color that I have done it for the entire building, because that really gives some nice additional details to the build. That it's a fun way to play around with paint. Paint is still a very powerful tool, and you don't really need skins when you're doing painting different regions to get different effects. Then we'll take out some quarter walls. We'll place them right alongside there. We'll do the same thing, of course, here on the other side of the building. There we go. That means we can actually add in a nice double doorway on both sides. Just like that. Actually add in the doors themselves as well, of course. And then we can take out our normal walls. And once again, just like we did actually for the first layer, add a layer of wooden walls right along the bottom. Except, of course, for there where we're going to get the gate. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, we'll just go around, fill in these wooden walls like that. Bring them all the way around. These two as well. And then, of course, we'll have some more quarter walls filling in these little gaps. There we go. Then we want to take out a large cellar door, and we want to actually go to the barn door and make sure that we add that here on the side. Then we can take out the frontier skins. We can change the actual door, as well as, of course, this first layer of wooden walls, as well as the doorways that we have in there, just to get that right aesthetic going again. And once again, I would probably also change the entire ceiling or floor here, but I'm not going to do that right here in the tutorial, just to save me some extra time. So those we want to all skin. Now we have the doorways to get onto the balcony, and if you want to bring in and out some bigger flyers, you can easily do that as well with the big barn door right here on the side. Now that we have all that in place, it's time to start filling in some walls. So we'll start with the normal adobe right like this to fill in basically this entire wall, except of course this little border. So we want to take out some quarter walls and fill in those remaining gaps so that we have this side completely done with this special entrance. Then, of course, above the doorway here in the middle, we can just completely fill it in with walls. We can do the same thing right there on the other side, as well as above this other door, of course. Just fill in those sides like normal. And for these sides, we are once again going to be creating some nice tall windows. So we'll go all the way around and get those same shapes in place so that we have room left to build a nice window in there. So we'll just go all the way around like that to create our lovely window shapes once again. Round like that, and the same thing right over here. Well, then it's time to start working on these windows over here. So first of all, we also want to add some pillars along the sides of these, similar to the windows that we did on the first layer. We're going to do the exact same approach for these. So we'll then take out all pillars and make sure, or beams actually, and then make sure that we kind of surround the entire window like that all the way around. Take out our half beams and make sure that we add those little details in again around the edges. And once again, we're going to go and do that for all of these windows so that we have a little bit more detail around them and a little bit more shape to them. So we'll just add these little half beams to all the windows everywhere around the building. So just like that, we'll add them all in. There we go. And then the last side over here, we'll fill those in as well. Then we'll take out all little quarter ceilings, and of course we'll add them here along the bottom of the windows as, again, little details where you could have some plants on top and stuff like that. We of course want to also change them to the frontier skins. There we go. All the way around. Just like that. And then of course, using the little quarter stairs of thatch, we want to make some supports for that as well to add even more detail to these lovely window frames. And we'll go all the way around like this to each of the windows to do the same thing. And then of course at the top we want to add in those little quarter ramps as another additional detail for them. There we go. So we'll do that for all of these. And then of course we're going to add some extra details with our half beams. Again, these are optional because, I mean, it does all use a bunch of extra structures, of course. So if you're limited on those, you can definitely leave this out because this is the least noticeable detail. But, you know, we like to play around with all these little things, especially now that we have all of these little pieces. It's fun to try and do some really cool detailing with them. It's quite nice to see this in the background, isn't it? We can see what we're working on, guys. We can see what we're aiming to achieve. There we go. And then we'll do these pieces right like this. There we go. And then, of course, it's time to take out our thatch railings and fill in the actual windows just like that. There we go. Another one over there. And we'll just keep this going all the way around so that we can get some of those nice, lovely looking windows. There we go. Just like that. And then the last window right over here, we'll fill it in as well. And then it's time to start adding the first roof of the build. We're going to start right here from this beam. Take out 2 stone ramps, start them like this, and then also bring it out like that. And then we'll basically just start filling this shape in along the front. And the reason we're using the stone texture is just because it matches very nicely with the different pieces. So we'll do the same thing over here. We'll connect those corners at the end, but for now we're just going to go around and add in these ramp pieces. So we'll just follow the shape of the building and go around like that. We'll do the same thing over here. And this will really start to get that nice pagoda look into the building. So we'll just go continue like that. And then the last remaining side, we want to add in another few of these ramps to get our roof going. There we go. Then, of course, we want to go to the ramp corners and fill in the actual corners for this build. Get them right in place like that. And we'll do that, of course, for each of the corners of the roof here. And that really will get that first layer of the roof going. Then we'll take out our wooden quarter walls. And we actually want to add them here along the edge of the roof that we've just placed around the building. And we want to go all the way around from one side to the other, adding this in everywhere. So we'll go all the way and we'll continue on this side too. So yeah, we're just going to go all the way around, adding in these wooden quarter walls. As you can see, I've flipped them around just because these textures are a little bit nicer for the purpose that we're going to use them for. So we just want to continue that, and then again continue it here on this side as well, trying not to misplace too many of them. So we'll just follow the edge of the roof all the way around, adding them in everywhere. And this is basically to add a little bit of extra detail to the roof, as well as add a little bit of a nicer underneath look, which we'll see in a second. Just finishing this last side and last layer of it, adding in all of these quarter walls until we meet back up again. There we go. Then we want to take out our thatch ramps, and we actually want to start right here. So 2 from the edge and start filling in the ramps. So basically we have a roof within a roof, and this is so that when we're walking underneath, we'll see these nice bamboo textures, which I think really fit the vibe and look a little bit nicer as a detail underneath the roof. So we basically making a double layer for this roof. We can actually remove that last one. We don't need that. And then we can start going around the corner, filling in this section of the roof too. So yeah, we kind of just want to go along and basically repeat the same process as the roof above, but now underneath, so that it looks a lot cooler underneath that stone edge. And then we'll just continue that again for this side of the building too. There we go. Just continue it like this. All the way around the building. And then we have one more side left to go. There we go. And we just want to continue these all the way around the edge of the build. There we go. Up to the corner, and of course adding that piece in. Then we want to take out our ramp corners, fill in the actual corners just like that. And well, yeah, in my opinion, this makes the underside look 1,000 times better, which you'll definitely see walking around on the balconies or on the layers below it. So I really like having this bamboo return into the design. So yeah, I think that's well worth it all. There we go. So we'll place all those in. And then we have the first layer of the roof, not completed, but really coming nicely along. So we'll take out our little quarter ceilings, and basically we want to add a little edge around the entire roof so that it has a little bit of an overhang outside of that layer of these quarter walls of the wood that we've added around. So we basically just want to go around. It also kind of helps curve out the edge of this roof, which I also quite like. And yeah, it's a nice added detail to it all and make it a little bit less flat around the edges. So we'll just follow it all the way through, adding these little quarter pieces around the entire edge of the building. So we'll just follow all the way along, just like that. And of course the last remaining side, the end is in sight for this part of the roof, and then we're pretty much done with this layer of the build, and we can move on to the next layer. There we go. Want to take out our stone pillars again. We want to go to these tiny thin half pillars and add them along the corners of the build. There we go. Same thing over here. Then we can take out our stone railings, and basically we want to make sure that we add them along the edge for some added detailing. So we'll just take it all the way alongside until it meets the pillars, and then we can go around the corners and add in these railings for each of the different sides of the build. So we'll just keep bringing this out all the way. Same over here. Just all the way along the edge. There we go. And then the last remaining side, adding in these last remaining pieces as extra details. And then we pretty much have this layer all complete. There we go. So as you can see, that is already starting to feel a lot more like a proper pagoda. Actually made a tiny mistake here on the corner, so we want to remove these pieces. You want to take out your slope walls. You want to add them around just like this. We want to then take out a thin pillar. We want to make sure that it sticks out above the pieces. And then we want to make sure that we have the railings go up again. So we just have this corner standing out a little bit more. And of course, you want to repeat that for each of the corners. And then here on the inside, of course, this is where we would start the stairs again. So again, on the same side as the other stairs, we want to keep 2 ceilings open. Then we'll add in 3 stairs going up like this. Then we'll add in some wooden ceilings, just like this. And then we'll have 2 more stairs going back up, just like that. Then we'll take out a pillar right here, so we'll have it right on the corner of the staircase going up, and then we have another one right over here on that corner. Then we can switch to the thin pillars and add them in between. So we have 1 layer of thin pillars there. We have another pillar right over there, and then another one going up there. And then we actually also want to have some pillars coming up from these ones, so we'll have thin pillars attaching them to the next layer. Then of course we want to take out our thatch railings again, add them alongside the whole staircase and the walkway, bringing it back up like that. And of course we also want to make sure we add them here alongside the bottom. So we just want to make sure that we add all of those details in. There we go. We have a nice staircase going up to the next layer of the build. And we then want to take out our ceilings again, of course, and start adding them in. We actually want to have 1 layer of ceilings on the outside here. And we want to make sure that we have this gap of 2 above the staircase. And then, of course, we can start filling in the rest of it. So make sure that we have 1 layer of ceilings on the outside of the wall, ready to fill in the next layer of the build, where we're going to slowly make the pagoda a little bit thinner and smaller as we get up to the higher layers. So for now, we'll just go around like this. And of course, start filling in this completely with all of the ceilings necessary. And once again, I would change all of the ceilings to the frontier skins because I think they look a lot nicer. Here along the stairs, of course, we want to add in these railings as well so we don't fall in. And then we want to take our scaffolding and actually add them underneath wherever we have a pillar to add the final little details to the previous layer now that we can. So we'll go around once more, adding in these pieces of scaffolding as some extra supports to the building, just like that. And then we can take out our thin pillars. We can place 1 on the corner. We can then have a gap of 3, a gap of 2, another gap of 2, and 1 more on the corner. Same thing over here, gap of 3, gap of 2, gap of 2, and another one on the corner. Same thing here, gap of 3, gap of 2, gap of 2, 1 on the corner, another gap of 3, gap of 2, gap of 2, and we've gone all the way around. And then of course we want to make sure that we add in the railing along the outside here of this walkway slash balcony so that we can get ready to work on the next layer of the build. And this is all nice and secure once again. So we'll just quickly go around adding all of these in just like that. There we go. All the way around. And then we can once again from the corner go in by 2 and another 2 and then start placing down a pillar that is 5 high. Leave a gap of 3, another pillar that is 5 high, another gap of 3, and another pillar. And we're going to repeat that same gap and pillar pattern all the way around this layer of the build. So basically it's a slightly thinner part of the building, but the same kind of principles for the building are still going to be counting. So there we go. That is the basic shape. And then we want to of course take out our beams, 1 from the top. We want to connect these different pillars, so yeah, we'll just bring them from one side to the other There we go. To basically, once again, create the skeleton of the next layer. So we'll just bring in all these beams. Going across like that. And then the last one, there we go. And then once again, above the beam, we want to flip around the adobe walls and just go all the way around this entire layer, just like that. Creating that first layer of this build. Getting ready to add all the details again. Then we want to take out a double doorway, and on the front side we're gonna go right over here, add one in there and add one right there. Of course, adding the doors to them both sides, and then taking out our normal walls and going around this entire layer to add in the first layer of walls again. So just going all the way around, adding in the first layer of our wooden walls for this part of the building. And once again, of course, we want to change these to the frontier skins. There we go, just to get that look that we have established in the previous layers. So we'll go around all the way and add all of these skins in. There we go. And then for the rest of these, we're going to create nice big windows again. So we're going to basically have the same kind of shape for all of these other sides. So we basically just want to create the same big window shapes for all of this. There we go. So some nice adobe walls all the way around the building. We are going to have a slight plot twist with the windows. Well, it's optional, of course. You can always just do the exact same windows everywhere, but we're going to have a few of them opened up so you could even potentially fly in and out with some flyers. And it's time to work on all the windows again, and once again we're starting out by adding these pillars to the side of them, and it's quite easy. For the initial phase of the windows, it's all going to be the same thing, but as I said, we're going to have some of them open so your flyers could still fly in. Not all of them, but some of them that are small enough to fit through. So we'll have some beams at the top and the bottom of the windows too, all the way round, just like that. And then we take out the half beam to once again add extra details around the entire window frame, just to give it a little bit more character. And yeah, we'll just go all the way around and add all of these little additions in. There we go, just like that. And yeah, we'll have to keep doing that for all sides, of course, adding them in everywhere so we get this look equally all the way around. So one more side over here, last one right here, adding a few more of these. There we go. So that's all the windows, and we actually also want to add these in here on the edge of this beam, just as we did at the previous layer, and once again to just add some extra depth and detail to the whole thing. So we'll just go around adding them in everywhere, just like that. And there we go. We'll continue over here on the front, just adding a few of these extra details in. There we go. Take out our quarter ceilings and of course add them here again as a little ledge right in front of the window. So we'll do that for all of the window frames, of course. And once again, this is a perfect place to add some little decorations, plants and stuff. And we definitely want to change the skins of these to the frontier ones. So we'll go do that all the way around again for each and every one of these. There we go. Then we'll take out our little quarter ramps and add them here along the top of the window, just like this. Again, same thing as we've done a couple of times now for the windows. Should be quite familiar by now, but it's always a nice little detail. We'll take out our half thin beams and we can add in some additional details just like that. And we'll also have to do that all the way around, of course. Just adding in all these little beams everywhere. Right here. There we go. Just a few more. All the little details to make these windows look really, really nice. There we go. I think this is the last one. So then underneath we want to of course add these stairs as supports, but we're not doing it of course if there's a door there, because that makes very little sense. But for the rest of these we can go around and add in some supports. Here of course we'll leave it open, and then we'll add the other spots wherever we can. Then over here we want to add in a window just like that. So that's just going to be a normal window. This is on the front of the building, by the way. Then here, for example, if we want to have an open window, what we do is we snap right over here. We flip this bottom one, then we can actually go back to using the normal ones. We can have them like this. And what you could actually do is have this one snapping in like that, so it feels a little bit more logical. Technically it wouldn't fit because of the ramp, but makes it look like it would fit, just making it a little less tall. What you could also do is leave out the diagonal one and just have one railing still in here at the top. But yeah, that's how you have an open window, so you could still fly through. At least with the pterodon will fit through that gap. The RG won't because of the pillars on the side, but if you leave those out, the RG will also be able to fly in and out, which means that for most of the rest of these windows we can just keep them normal and closed. So here on the side, just want to fill them in, and then here on this side we also just want to go ahead, fill them in like normally. So this is just the other side, and then here at the back of the building we could do opposite the open window. I would probably have a closed window, but if you want to have another one that's open, I would do that right over here, and then we can just do the same thing. So you have two ways to fly in and out of this layer if you wanted to, and that's of course always convenient if you're using this as an aviary. Now we have the stair come up right over here, so from the other side here we're going to be building another staircase. So we're going to have 3 of them come up just like this. Then we'll have some ceilings just like that, and then we'll have 2 more to go on to the next layer. We'll have a pillar right over here that will bring us all the way up to the next layer, and another pillar will be right over here just until there. Then we'll have the thin pillars in here, bringing all the way to the top of this layer as some added supports. There we go. We'll have a thin pillar there, over there, over here, and over there, just along all the entirety of the staircase. Then we can start adding in the railings along the side as well, to make sure that this is all nice and safe. And then we can follow that along for the entirety of the whole staircase. Just trying to get them all in the right spots. There we go. So that will be the way up to the next layer again. Okay, then we have this layer pretty much complete. Of course, we'll still need to add in another layer of roof. So once again, we take out our ramps, the stone ramps, and we'll start right along these beams with the similar shape that we used before to get started on the first part of our roof. And we're going to do that for all the sides before we add in the final corners, as well as, of course, the thatch layer underneath to make it all look a little bit nicer. But yeah, we're gonna go around for the next layer of the roof, and that will definitely start to help form the pagoda look and feeling. So we'll just continue adding in all of these pieces just like that. We'll take out the corner pieces, of course, fill those in so that we really are starting to get that nice roof. And then here over well, we'll do all of these pieces to get that in place. There we go. So that's a nice start, but now of course we have to take out our quarter walls again. Make sure to flip them around this way, and we'll start adding in a whole other layer all the way around the edge of the roof, just so that we can get the other part of the roof in place before we can call it finished on this layer. And then we have one more layer at the top, which is going to be a nice addition as well. So we'll just follow the edge all the way around. Of course, the roof is already slightly smaller than the previous layer, so it gets a little bit easier every layer that we move up, and it's all going to be worth it in the end. It's going to look really quite nice, so we'll just follow along, adding in these walls all the way through. There we go. Then we'll take out our thatch ramps. Make sure it's 2 for the from the corner, of course, for each of these. And then, of course, we can start adding in our ramps again, following the same shape of the roof all the way to the other side. And again, around the next corner, just to fill in the entire underside of the roof with these nice bamboo looking ramps. So next section over here, just keep adding them in. There we go. Just continuing that all the way until we've done it all the way around. So just a few more, adding in all of the ramps, and then of course we'll fill in the corners afterwards. So this should meet up again. Take out the corners, and we can add those in as well to really finish these details. And once again, this is maybe not needed for the practical purposes, but definitely for the aesthetics, this is doing quite a lot. And I mean, these new thatch ramps and corners look really quite good. And then all there's left to do for the roof is to add the final edges around. So we'll take these out and we'll go all the way around the entire outside of the roof. There we go. And we'll just go all the way around until we have that nice edge around the base, rounding off that roof a little bit. And we can add in the final details for the roof. So there we go. One more side. Bringing this all the way around until we meet up with where we started. Then we can, of course, take out those slope walls again. Have one over here, one over there. Same thing for this corner. One over here, one over there. Repeat that again. Right here. Very nice. And then one more there. One more there. Take out our thin pillars for the corners. Make sure that they poke out at the top. There we go. And one more. There, we're done. And then we want to, of course, add the railings around, which should be pretty straightforward. Just going around the entire thing, adding these railings in. There we go. And of course, we want to do this for the entire roof all the way around. Just making sure we meet up with the pillars in the corner each time. And trying to not misplace these. There's of course many snap points. And we want to make sure that we hit the right one each time. So we can follow this all the way around. There we go. Now that we have that roof finished, it means we can move on to the next layer. Of course, we can start right over here at the top of the stairs, adding in the ceilings. And once again, we want to make sure that we have one little overlap at the edge of the building, and we want to continue that like so. We want to make sure that we leave a gap of 2 here for the staircase so that we go around that, and for the rest we can just make sure that we fill in that entire shape, and again only have one ceiling on the outside of the walls. There we go. We'll just go all the way around like that and fill in the roof without a problem. Now that we have that in place, we can also make sure that we add the final details here by having some scaffolding coming from each of the pillars that we have in place on that layer. So we will just go around it and make sure that we add all of those scaffolding pieces in. Then we want to take out our thin half pillars, and every other 2 we want to add one in right along the edge of this building, just like that, to get the railing started here. There we go. And speaking of railings, once we have those pillars in place, you can start adding a nice railing all the way around, of course, securing this balcony once again, making sure we're not going to be falling off, and just of course getting a very nice looking railing all the way around the building. There we go, all the way up to this side. Then we'll take out a pillar and make sure to go in by 2 and in by 2 again, and make sure that we add 4 pillars. And we're going to do that for each of these corners, of course. Getting the skeleton in place for this part of the build. Then we want to take out our wooden walls. Here at the back, we can just fill it in. Here at the side, we can fill it in. At the other side, of course, we can fill it in as well. And then here at the front, we want to just add them right to the corners. Then we'll add some quarter walls like that. And of course, we can have a doorway right in the middle, adding in the actual doors, and of course, making sure to change all of this into the frontier skin. And again, the ceiling, I would change to the frontier skin too. And then here on this side, on the front, is actually going to be quite simple. We just want to fill in this entire wall. And then on the other sides, we're going to create some big windows. They're going to have a slightly different shape, however. They're going to be a little bit wider up here. And this is a perfect little room to use as your personal bedroom and logout spot, respawn, you name it. So we just want to create a nice room like this. And same as always, we will start with adding some pillars along the sides of the windows, just like that. And we actually want to also add in some pillars along the sides of this doorway. Come to think of it, I don't know if we've done that for the previous one, so let's make sure we do that as well before we forget. So add some alongside the doors, and probably we don't have any alongside these doors either. And then what we actually also want to do is make sure that we add in the pillars right above it like that. And then of course on these sides we don't have to add anything in because there's already a window above it. But over here we can do these same pillars just like that. And of course we can have these beams going above and below the actual windows that we're working on, just like that. Go to the half beams and make sure that we add in those little details around the corner of each of these. So we'll just go around adding all of those in. There we go. Just like that. All the way around. Then we want to, of course, take out our quarter ceilings. Add a little lip here at the bottom. Make sure to do that for all 3 sides, as well as changing it to the frontier skin, because that always looks a little bit nicer. Then we can take out our quarter ramps, have some above the windows, of course, to create that nice little detail for each of these. And then we can change to these stairs. We want to add one here on this corner and one on that corner. And of course, we're going to do that for each of these sections, just like that. Then we want to take out our thin beams again. And once again, we want to add in some of those details. It's the same principle, even though the windows have become a little bit bigger. But there we go. We'll add in those little details just like that. And that means, of course, we can start adding in the railings inside of the windows so that we can finish them. There we go. We'll do the same thing right over here. Just like that. And then the same thing over here on this side as well. There we go. So that's kind of all of the windows added in. And of course, for the staircase up here, we want to make sure that we have some railings around it so that it's all nice and safe as well. And then it's actually already time to take out those stone ramps to start on the roofs over here. So again, like usual, we want to start with adding in these layers of the ramps around the entire building. We'll do the corners later, but for now we want to start with this shape. And this is also going to be the final layer and final roof of the pagoda. So we're almost at the end, and we're gonna of course make sure that we have a nice finishing touch up here. So we'll just fill in these pieces. We'll of course add in these corner pieces as well, making sure that we have everything nicely, neatly filled in all the way around. There we go. Same thing over here. Just like that. Then, of course, it's time to take out our wooden quarter walls. And once again, make sure that we go all around the building here. And we'll just follow the shape around. Unfortunately, of course, now the roof hasn't got that many pieces to it anymore, so it gets a little bit easier with every layer that we build, and it will be well worth it by the end, of course. Looking very, very nice. So there we go. We continue this little ledge along until we meet back up with where we started it all. There we go. And then, of course, we can take out our ramps, make sure that it's 2 from the end. And we can start filling in the same shape of the roof, but now underneath the actual stone layer. And we'll just follow this all the way around the building again. So there we go. Just like that. Filling in all the pieces, and of course, yeah, you can see these lovely thatch textures that really add a lot to the look of all things. There we go. We'll fill these in, and then of course we have the last corners to just fill in. There we go. Same over there. Same over here. And there we go. And then, of course, we will add in that little edge around it all with our stone quarter ceilings. So we'll just follow the entire edge of this thing until we've been all the way around it. So we'll just quickly go all the way around and add in all of these ceilings just like that to once again really round off the edge of the roof. There we go. Last little bit before we meet back up with where we started. So I want to make sure that we don't misplace too many. We then want to take out our slab walls, of course, and build our little corners for this roof. There we go. Just like that. It's gonna really add that extra little touch to it all. So I want to make sure we add that everywhere. There we go. And then of course we want to make sure that we add in the railings as well. So we want to just go around, follow the shape, and snap the railings into the right positions. So just follow the edge and the shape of the building, trying to not misplace too many pieces, and just follow all the way along for the final detailed edge that we need to do for the roof. There we go, just like that. Of course, add in the pillars on the corners as well, making sure to have them stick out, so snap them to the right spot. There we go for all of these. Then we want to take out our actual roof, so we're going to go a little bit steeper and curve this roof upwards. So we're going to start adding in 2 roof pieces on each of these sides. Then of course adding in our corners just like that all the way around. There we go. And then the final layer, of course, using the corner pieces again, going all the way around, and there we go. And then if we're looking from the front, we want to go all the way to the top and add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 pieces like that. Add 1 thin pillar right on top of that, then go to the thin beams and make sure that we add them to the side of it, both sides of the building, to really get that nice final detail for the pagoda. And with that, we get to this very nice looking build, as you can see, with plenty of room on the inside, including of course the whole storage layer at the bottom, as well as plenty of room for your crafting, your tames, flyers on different levels, and plenty of balconies to enjoy the views, park more flyers, etc, etc. So whether you're just looking for a very fancy aviary to combine maybe with some of the other Japanese inspired builds that I've done, or you want to use this as your main base, I think this will serve you quite well indeed, and I'm quite happy with the way this one turned out. But if you want to take it to the next level, you can of course add some paint. Now you definitely do not need any mods to make it look nice. If you just start painting, it will already transform most of the build. So first of all, you want to paint all of the Adobe pieces completely to silver. That's how you make them white. And then if you want to add some extra details, you could add certain regions to these ones that we flipped around and make them the gore color. That's what I used for all of these red pieces. Those are painted in the gore color, which in my opinion really brings out the feeling in these builds. So yeah, adding the gore color really makes it pop, especially against the white, of course. Also make sure that the wood and the white pieces really have that nice contrast. And then for the roof itself, I used the ocean color to get those nice vibrant popping colors again. Then in my build, I've used some extra details. The standing torches I've changed into these lovely little lanterns with the J Cosmetics. Definitely would recommend installing that client side, because yeah, that fits perfectly with a Japanese inspired build. I've also used the Castle Craft structure skin, another cosmetic for this dragon statue, as a little trophy skin. And then of course adding plants along the windows as well as plants on the top of the roof. I've used JVA's landscaping for that, but of course you can also use some plants from the Bob Telltale DLC with the shovel and the plant pot instead. And I've also used some Western Deco mod around to add in some extra detail, mostly a little bit of hay here and there. And then I've used more JVS landscaping to kind of go around the bottom of this to kind of cover it up, but that's definitely optional. Don't need to do that, of course. So if we take a look around the base, we'll see plenty of space, of course, on the balconies for your various flyers. You can easily park them there, and of course there's plenty of room on the inside too. We have a big first layer, which is definitely where you want to have your bigger crafting stations like the replicator and the industrial forge, as well as having some storage here will definitely easily fit around as well. But of course you have a whole survival base that you can play around with and really fill up with everything that you need right at the bottom as like a little additional secret place. And then the rest of the tower I've mostly dedicated to being an aviary. So we got a bunch of flyers up here, as well as of course some of the things that you might need when looking after these tames. And then we can go up to the next layer again to get even more flyers. Again, pterodons fit through these windows that we've opened up so that you can easily still fly inside. And then the final layer here is where I've got my bedroom. So yeah, this is where you could respawn, etc. We have a little bit of decoration around, and of course we have access to the balcony with amazing views, as well as more spots for more flyers should you need it. But all in all, it makes for a very fun and cool build in my opinion. Really like the way this one turned out with utilizing the new building pieces. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again in the next video or stream. For now, goodbye.